All right, welcome back, everybody, to the Beskar Bucket. I am your host, John, here with Zoe from Star Wars Geek Girl.
Hello, everyone.
How are you doing today, Zoe?
I'm doing great. Very excited for more Bad Batch and the start of Mando this week.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I am super excited to have you on. Your dad's been hounding me for months now to ask you to be on the show, so... Granted, you know how he is. He pesters until he gets an answer, so...
Yep. Believe me, I know.
So, well, I mean, I guess to kick things off, you want to tell everyone a little bit about your show? I know you've been around for much longer than I have, but it never hurts to promote.
Yeah, of course. So Star Wars Geek Girl, it's me and my friend Lizzie. We are both Sabine cosplayers, but we talk about everything Star Wars. We normally just try and do like the news in Star Wars every week, but when there's no news, we'll talk about other things Star Wars related. So yeah, we try to do weekly. Every once in a while, we get a little thrown off because I just graduated school, but I was in school. Like she's in school. Time zones were a problem for a while. It's a whole podcast scheduling is its own monster. So
no kidding. Yeah. So how did you guys get started? I mean, I know the story, but for those listening.
Yeah. So I got started because my dad listened to a bunch of Star Wars podcasts, and he also listened to me not shut up about Star Wars. He's like, you could do this. You could do a podcast. And I was like, no, Dad, I don't want to. Like, podcasts are for old people. And he was like, no, just do it. So I gave in, and I tried it, and I really liked it. And then one of the first episodes, it was like the 5th episode or something, my dad had connected with Lizzie's dad through Facebook, about Sabine cosplaying. He was like, hey, like our kids are about the same age. Does your kid want to be on my kid's podcast? And then Lizzie just became a fixture, and now it's both of our podcasts.
Yeah. Now, Sal, their podcast is the Rogue Rebels, right?
Yes, that's their family podcast because the dad dresses up as Kanan, among others. They all have a bunch of costumes. But for the Rogue Rebels, Dad is Kanan, Mom is Hera, Lizzie is Sabine, and then her younger brother Axel is Ezra.
Gotcha. Now this is year 7 for you, right?
Yes. Yep, 7.
Wow. It's impressive that you've been able to keep it going for this long, especially like you said, like going through school and whatnot. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was in my freshman year of high school when we started it. Lizzie was in her 8th grade, I believe, like last year of middle school. And, I just graduated college now, and Lizzie's graduating college soon too, so it's really weird.
Yeah, it's weird to think that was, 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Which, granted, I think when you were a freshman, I probably would have been a junior or a senior, so it really sucks to me to think that I graduated six or 7 years ago. So,
yeah.
Makes me feel old. But, so, now you've done a lot of interesting things with your podcast. I think the biggest one is, obviously being on the podcast stage at Celebration. You've done it, what, 3 or 4 times now?
I've done it 3 times, coming up on the 4th next month.
Right, which that's exciting.
Yes.
But, have you had, like, a favorite moment from, any really, I point out Celebration because, that's the thing I'm most jealous of. But, is there anything in particular that, when you think back on your 7 years of podcasting so far, is there anything in particular that stands out to you?
Oh, so many. We've been very fortunate, mostly because of my dad's aforementioned hounding of people, to have some really great guests. One of our first guests ever was Vanessa Marshall, who obviously plays Hera in Star Wars Rebels and has a bunch of other very notable roles, Star Wars and not. She has, like, other Star Wars stuff, too. Like, she voices the Jedi Master in one of the VR games, because I was playing the game and I was like, that's Hera. I know that voice. So Vanessa Marshall has actually been on our show a couple of times. And she is just an absolute delight and always a pleasure. Anne Convery is another one. She has written for some Star Wars. She's written at least one short story and I think some other things. And she's Dave Filoni's wife, and she is a total blast. And we'll still like message and talk. Like we talked a lot at last celebration. She's like a total joy of a person. I'm trying to think of others. Just I mean, obviously. It's nice. It gives you like, because Lizzie, for the longest time, now we're actually both on the same coast, although I'm planning to head out to California, so it'll flip-flop a bit, but for the longest time, Lizzie is from California, so Lizzie's over there, and I'm in Pennsylvania, so it's like an online friendship. And so like having a podcast kind of gives you an excuse to have a like several hour like video call with your friend every week, which is very fun. And it's one of those things, I mean, I'm sure like it's hard when you have friends, it's very easy to let those things kind of slip, but when you have like a reason to do it, it's easier to do. So that was always nice. And then getting to meet Lizzie and her family in person at Celebration Orlando was an amazing moment, and they've been they're a very good support system for me when I was in California this past semester. They're my favorite people in the world. I did, through the podcast, I got to do a panel at Keystone Comic-Con in Philadelphia with Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, and who plays Governor Price in Rebels, as well as Freya in Resistance, and she has like a whole bunch of other amazing roles. She's Zara for Critical Role. And Steve Bloom, who is Zeb in Rebels, among, again, a ton of other amazing roles.
Right.
His like voice actors are like, their IMDb page is always like 3 miles long. It's amazing. But that was a really fun panel. He wasn't on like the panel list, but they just like, oh, we brought Fred Tatasciore, who's done like voices of like Vader, and like he does Wookiee roars for like a lot of games, and he also voices an Overwatch character, which was very exciting for me. And that panel was like so much fun. Again, more joys of people to talk to. I got to meet with and talk to them a little bit after the panel too. Absolutely amazing people. And then Steve remembered me. Like 2 years, like it was a couple years later. I saw him again at Keystone Comic-Con. He's like, "Oh, I remember you." And I was like, "Oh my gosh." I'm trying to think. There's so many. E.K. Johnston, who wrote my favorite Star Wars book, among some other ones that I love. She was a great guest. So many memories. 7 years is a lot.
Right. Yeah. Especially, I mean, you're now. I don't want to toot your horn or anything, but like you are one of the bigger like Star Wars podcasts, and I feel like you cover like a very specific niche that because look, Star Wars is a very male-dominated fandom, but having a female voice and as big as you guys are, I think it's really like it's great that you guys are as big as you are and you're able to do these things, and not to sound cliche, but girls can do it too, that sort of thing. So, but now I am curious because I actually don't know the answer to this. Why Sabine? Why was that the costume that you leaned towards?
Good question. Well, I actually first wanted the Sabine costume just from the there's all those promo videos they did before Rebels when they'd each thing, and it's hers was meet the explosive artist, and so I thought she seemed like a cool character. I thought her armor was great because I liked Mandalorian armor, but at that time the only canon cool main character-ish female Mandalorian was Bo-Katan, who I liked, but she has some issues also, which makes her more fun. But I just saw Sabine. I love the color scheme. I just thought she had a great energy. I think Tia Sakar brings such a wonderful energy to her voice. I was just very instantly hooked on her character just from the vibes. And then as the show goes on, I just fell more and more in love with her character. I found her very relatable a lot of times, trying to figure out who she is, especially because Rebels aired through my high school years, basically.
Right.
I think the first season was 8th grade, and then the last season was my junior year of high school. So she was a character with like a specific arc that really resonated with me at that time in my life, which made me just grow even more and more like super attached to her. Made me want to do every new version, and I just love like the short dyed hair. Like it's not dyed right now. There's a little bit of blonde in here, but like like that's my kind of vibe. I love like short dyed hair. So like just yeah, it was initially maybe I guess like superficial. It feels weird to say because we're just talking about animated characters like or like like fictional
Right.
characters, but like kind of superficial. Like, oh, she looks cool. I want to like wear that. And then it became more of an emotional attachment pretty quickly. Once she started getting more spotlight throughout the series.
Right. Now, did you and Lizzie plan out the Sabine thing, or did that just kind of
No.
come naturally?
No, so Lizzie and her family were, as far as I'm aware, the very first Rebels like Ghost Crew cosplayers.
Mm.
So like they did that like before I think pretty much anyone else. Let's say their little family. So like Lizzie I think was the first. Well, technically, this is lore I guess. Her mom was the first Sabine because she wanted to do Sabine. And then the first like episode of the series comes out, or like some of the first clips, and they're like, "Oh wait, Kanan and Hera are a thing. That's kind of weird to have Lizzie be Hera and Dad be Kanan. We got to switch it up." Just one of those things. But so yeah, they were the very first, and then I came along a little later. But yeah, the reason I actually connected with Lizzie because my dad was like, "Hey, this Sal guy built Sabine armor for his daughter. Let me hit him up and ask for some advice on making this one."
Yeah, which real quick to elaborate on that, before I joined the 501st, when your dad would talk about, because obviously we do the inflatable Falcon every week, so I got to plug that at some point. But he talks about how he just connects with all these people, and I'm thinking like, how do you know this many people? And now being in the Legion for I think 9 months now, I now I understand like, oh, okay, this is a big family where you just reach out to anyone in the Legion, and most of the time they're willing to help you out. So anytime he would mention things like that, I'd be like, are you really just hitting up strangers for some advice or some help? So, but I get it now.
Yeah, no, and I grew up with it. I was in the Galactic Academy at 6. Like I started trooping when I was very, very little. I always like to throw out the Cassian line. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old because I started trooping when I was 6, so it works very well. So I definitely grew up with that, and it's very nice to have that support network. And yeah, my dad, I'm still learning. I think it might be like a generational thing. I'm still learning how to just like hit someone up. My dad's very good at it, but I'm like, oh, but like I don't want to annoy that, like the whole thing.
Nope. I have the same thing.
Yeah, and I need to, cause like when people, I always have to think like when people hit me up, I'm not annoyed, or if I am, it's not like annoyed at them. It's more just like it's like if I'm like in the middle of something, it's like stupid phone, but it's not like the person at all. So I'm like learning how to like break that. But yeah, it's very nice, and it's so funny. I spent a semester I mentioned in LA in the fall, and my very, very first weekend, I just like popped on the Mandalorian merc boards just to like look, just to see, and I saw there's like an armor party happening with the LA Garrison, like the weekend after I moved in. It was literally 2 days after I moved in, and I was like, okay, like maybe I'll go and just like hang out. And I like messaged the person who was hosting it. I was like, hey, like you don't know me, but like can I just come meet you guys? Like I just moved here. And they were so chill and so nice. It was just like instantly very familiar. Like everyone's so ready to help and hang out. It was crazy. Like I went to this armor party and they're like, oh, we're going to see Rogue One at the El Capitan next weekend. You should come with us. And I was like, oh my gosh, okay. And then we're there, and they're like, oh, like, we're going to get dinner after. And I was like, okay. And then they're like, oh, like, we have an extra ticket to the Andor premiere. Do you want to come? And it was just, like, crazy. I'm like, you don't, like, you just met me. You have no idea who I am. And here you are, like, just offering me all this stuff. It's such a great community. They'll, like, actually, one of them just messaged me, like, last week. It's like, hey, are you still in California? I'm like, oh, no, not right now. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm just gonna invite you to the Mando premiere. I was like, what? Like, come on. Such a great community. I forget where I was going with that. I had a point, and I forgot it. But, yeah, it's very exciting.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, though. Like, when I joined the Ohio Garrison here, you know, everyone is, you know, super welcoming, super friendly. And, you know, again, now that I've been in it for a couple months, you know, I've made some great friends that... And the other thing is, because I get it, I'm the same way. I can't pester somebody. Which I also need to break. But I've had so many people, like, I've got TK armor that's just been sitting in my basement waiting to be finished. I've had so many people be like, hey, if you need help finishing it, just hit me up, let me know. I have not taken up any of them on that offer yet. But yeah, I think the costuming groups, they get a bad name. Because, you know, you've got those few bad people that they don't, you know, they're not as inclusive as the majority of people. But I think it's great that, you know, as soon as you went out there, everyone was like, you're one of us now, you're out here. I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it was just very instantly like, oh, like, you know, like, oh, Zoe, like, let's hang out. And I felt bad because I'm terrible with names. So I was, like, introduced to, like, 12 people at once. And I was like, I'm not gonna remember all this. But, like, no one cared. Like, it was just very kind. And it's the same reason I like Celebration so much. Is because you're there and you know you have something in common with every person in that room. And that it makes it easier, you know, for, you know, all of us nerds who are so nervous about social interaction sometimes. It just makes it a lot easier to be like, well, I know we like something in common. Maybe not the same parts of that something, you know, that's where it gets a little dicey, but there's something there.
Right.
And that's just, you know, this is what I love so much, you know, and like you said, there's a bad rap, there's definitely the a-holes, as there are everywhere, but, I think there's a lot more good that comes out of it, and I think that's what people tend to overlook.
Yeah, I mean, with everything that we do, in the way of charity, I think, you know, that kind of gets swept under the rug because the way that most of the public sees us is on social media or at conventions, which I think that's where you get a lot of the bad apples, if you will. But yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about when you were accepted into the Mando Mercs.
Yes.
Because I know that is a special story that is not that I've heard before, but for everyone else listening, you know, what happened when you were accepted into the Mercs?
Yeah, that is a story that I didn't mention earlier. Well, yeah, so basically, like I said, I had been trooping since I was 6. My Galactic Academy number is 98. 00098. Yeah. But obviously I had to wait until I was 18 to get accepted into the Mandalorian Mercs, like, officially, or into any of the costuming groups outside of the GA, officially. And so, what happened was I just started college, because I turned 18 a couple weeks after I started college. And I was doing just like a panel, like a local con, you know, it was one of those ones where it's like, you know, like instead of like the big auditoriums that you sometimes get, it's just like, you know, nice table and chairs, very homey atmosphere. So I'm sitting at my table, just podcasting, doing my thing, wearing my armor, and all of a sudden there's like chanting, and a line of so many Mandos comes around the corner. They had like a flag and stuff, and I was so confused. I didn't even realize I'd taken like approval pictures with my dad, and this was like literally days after I turned 18. I did not know it would like go this fast. But all these Mandos come in, led by the at the time Alorad of Mavoyala, which is the Pennsylvania clan, and they come up. He takes his helmet off, and he reads a letter from the at the time, I forget what it's called. I'm a bad merc, but the like leader of all of the Mandalorians about me and my contributions and stuff. It was a very sweet letter. I have it framed, not in my room. It's in another room, but he read it and formally welcomed me into the mercs. It was crazy. Like I again, it was like so many people, like all these Mandalorians coming around, and it was very sweet. I have the patch. They gave me a patch and the letter, and I was officially in the mercs. It was very exciting. I also got at the time there was one of the mercs was he would make a little fake knife for new members of the Pennsylvania clan, and so I got one. It's very nice, nicely crafted. It's something that's like, you know, we can, if you have a custom Mando, you can like put in your belt. I don't have a custom Mando yet, but it will definitely be there when I do have one.
Yeah. Now, do you have a plan for your custom Mando?
Oh, see, I really want to do a like Lothwolf Mando, so like white, like big like white fur cloak, like the gray markings, one like a yellow tinted visor.
There you go.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a little more thought out than mine. I knew I wanted red and I wanted silver or white. So that was what I was playing with, so.
See, I'm so like, I don't even know. I don't know what my issue is, but like there's so many Mandalorians that have like such a beautiful color scheme, but if I just go color schemes, I like cannot pick one. Like I have to like base it off some like all my Mando ideas. There's a couple others floating around there. Lothwolf's just my favorite. But there's like so many. Like I have to base it off like a creature or something. Like if it's just like I can pick any color I want, like I can't comprehend that. It's too much. It's too much for me. I've also wanted to do a Purrgil Mando, I think, because you could have like, you know, they have like the long tentacle things. You could have like a cape that's kind of like, you know, those like kind of tendrily capes that like have like the long things like coming down. I'm not making any sense, but like.
No, I know what you're saying.
And like do like purples and yellows and blues. I just have a Purrgil up on my wall, so. But yeah.
No, that sounds great. Now, obviously, your dad is in the 501st. Are you planning on joining the 501st at any point?
Yes, I do want to be in. I do want to be in all the groups. Because I'm currently in the Mercs and the Rebel Legion, both with Sabine. I kind of cheated. It's just Sabine and everything at the moment. But I have a pretty much finished animated TIE pilot. Which can get me in the 501st. The reason it's an animated TIE pilot is because I can take the helmet off and wear like a balaclava with a little brown thing of hair out the front, and then I'm undercover Sabine from that one episode of Rebels. So it all comes back to Sabine a little bit, but...
Hey, we love the 2-in-1 costumes. Yeah, don't feel bad, because my Rebel Legion costume is going to be Ben Solo in his good boy sweater. Because I've already got everything else. So.
Right. No, that's one thing you might be the same way. I'm definitely like a little bit of completionist, not with everything, but with enough things. And so I'm like, I have to have all the Sabines. Like I have to have all the, you know, all the things. I don't know if I'm gonna go animated biker scout though. That just seems like a lot of work. Maybe if there's like a good animated biker helmet.
It just doesn't seem like a comfortable costume, to be honest.
No, and that's the thing, like, a regular biker scout is, like, supposed to be so comfortable. But the animated one, it doesn't have as many, it doesn't look like it has, maybe it does, and, you know, but to me it doesn't look like it has many of the pros of a biker scout. I mean, I think it looks very cool, but, you know, I can just go undercover as a TIE pilot anyway, like, it's fine.
Well, plus you can get the Tie Reserve out of that, and then there's four costumes off a Tie Pilot. I
Well,
don't know if they're all
I think
animated though.
animated might be different. I think there's some different components there.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I'll have to research, but I'm not sure if I can multitask my animated quite as easily.
Look,
Just,
I've
it's all
I
those little differences.
right. Look, I've been so focused on the Sith Lord detachment and the Imperial Officer Corps that the Jolly Roger Squadron is way out there for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, but speaking of the Officer Corps, I just I just got my dad into the 501st. So,
Nice.
he and I have officially had our first troop together, which that is obviously something you've done since you were 6 years old.
Yes.
Care to share any good trooping stories of you and your dad?
Oh, oh man. Well, this was one of my first troops. I was very little. So memories are a little hazy, but I have very fond memories of a troop at a grocery store. Stoppers of Kissel Hill, not far from me. We had a troop there, and I was definitely like 6, 7, and I remember being a child. I remember I was very excited because it was like the first troop my grandparents came. It was, I think, actually, I don't know if they came to another one, but it was a troop where my grandparents came to see us troop, which was very cool because, they were like a little older, so like they necessarily like get it. Like when we say like, oh, like we dress up as Star Wars characters, and like, dude, they're like, oh, okay. But like, I think I really appreciated that they got to see it in action and see what it is. I think that always puts it into perspective for anybody. But what I really remember is my sister and I were with Jawas, and so we got those like little kid shopping carts that they have, and we got to go around. My dad has a video of it, of us going around like picking out snacks and like Jawas shopping. It's a very cute video. We got like cupcakes, cookies, like all the like, we're like 7. Safi was like 5. And my dad actually bought the stuff that we got, so we had a ton of snacks. It was because he was like, well, I got it, he's like, I can't, let these, like, he's like following these Jawas around, letting us like get, and he's like, well, I have to get it now, so.
Right. Well, you can't put the goods in front of them and then just take it away. That's a recipe for disaster.
He's the one that let us, pick everything out. My dad always calls it, when we talk about it now, he goes, oh, like, tell him about my bad dad speech. I just remember when we were very little, in the first couple years, on the drive to a troop, we'd sit in the car, my dad would be driving, we'd be in the back seat, and my dad would be like, now, no talking, you only make Jawa noises. Do not take your mask off. You have to make sure you're a Jawa. Make sure, like, your arms, like, it was a whole speech about how to be a good Jawa. And how to, like, troop right and, like, behave, and, like, he's like, don't mess with other people's costumes. Don't, like, he's very strict.
Oh my God, I wish someone would give that speech to some of our Jawas. If I had a nickel for every time that one of our Jawas steals my lightsaber, I mean...
I have stolen a few lightsabers, but I always make sure, you gotta, like, check first,
Right.
I do remember at one time, this isn't as much a dad memory, but it was an event, like a charity, I don't know what to call it. It was like an outdoor, like, charity event. Like, there's, like, tables for different things in the community, like games and stuff for kids, in a nice little park. I don't know what it was called. It was a very long time ago. But it was, like, one of those. And it was my first time ever seeing Saber Guild. I don't know when Saber Guild was founded, but I think this was like a very young Saber Guild, like recently created Saber Guild chapter at least. And they're doing like little Jedi training with like pool noodle lightsabers. My sister and I were like, oh my gosh, we should do Jawa Jedi training. Like that would be cute. So we walk over, and one of the Jedi masters, like that was trooping, he points to the Jawas. There's like 8 kids around him. Points to the Jawas, and he's like, hey, those Jawas are coming to steal our lightsabers. So this like gaggle of kids comes after us and starts attacking us with the pool noodle lightsabers. And we weren't even planning on stealing them.
Yeah, but I mean, you can never be too sure with the Jawas
No, you
around.
gotta be careful with the Jawas. It was just very funny. Yeah, I'm trying to think of like specific memories. It's just any time I get to troop with my dad, and he's a stormtrooper, and getting to like mess with him in character, which I can do as both a Jawa and Sabine, is
Right.
very fun. It's always a good time, you know, making sure all the straps are in place and checking, making sure no one's armor is, falling apart or falling off.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah. See, I feel like you and I kind of have the same benefit of a costume where it's pretty easy to maneuver, but it's impossible to see.
Oh yeah, well, and that's the thing with Sabine. I'm very fortunate that I can, because I wear a wig under, or when I do the epilogue Sabine, I make sure my hair is nice and freshly purple. I can take my helmet off, which is very nice, because, some of those troops where you're, like, indoor and outdoor, you're, like, outside so long, and it's not terrible, like, obviously the mask is still a mask, and you might be fogging up, but it's, like, also kind of like sunglasses built in. And then you go inside, and it's dark, and you're like, I cannot see through this helmet. So I can take it off, but I get to be a little bit of a guide dog sometimes. Or another benefit of taking my helmet off is, when you get a kid that's scared, I can take my helmet off and be like, hey, look, we're just people. Like, you don't have to be scared. It doesn't always work. I think my face might be a little scary too, but sometimes it does work.
Yeah. Well, see, at least you have the benefit of the bright colors. See, when I walk up and, I am all black with an intimidating mask, it's... But I get what you're saying, though. That's why So my hair, right before I got my Kylo Ren costume, my hair was down to here. It was real long. But I cut it specifically so that I had the benefit of being able to take my helmet off if need be. So... However, now it's a little long that if I don't wear a balaclava, my hair pops out of the bottom of the helmet, so...
Yeah.
But that is nice that, at least we have that where we can take the helmet off if need be. But thankfully, I don't have the fogging issue, since mine is a mesh screen as opposed to, like a traditional visor.
Oh, yeah.
But then again, there's a little give and take. There's no fog. However, I always tell people it's like looking cross-eyed through a mosquito net, because it's literally it's just as wide as your eyes, and it's a mesh screen, so it's not a clear picture ever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I get the fogging, but like I said, like when it gets too bad, I take my helmet off, let it chill, I can put it back on.
Now, do you have another costume like lined up other than the TIE pilot?
Yes, we are currently working on an Ahsoka, Siege of Mandalore Ahsoka. Personally, Ahsoka, as much as I was talking earlier about loving Sabine, since I was a kid, Ahsoka has always been my absolute favorite. And I loved her, and I always loved her design, but there wasn't any. She never had an outfit that really stuck out to me as like, I want to do a costume of that, And so paired with the fact that Ahsoka is such a commitment with the head prosthetics and the makeup, I just never did, even though she was my favorite. And then Siege of Mandalore came out, and I saw that awesome Mandalorian-inspired, like, outfit with, like, bits of armor on. I was like, oh, that's it. There's my Ahsoka costume. So we're working on that, hoping to debut it at Celebration London if all goes well.
Now, do you have the Leku already?
I do. We got them from KM Creations on Instagram. I think is her name. We found her on Instagram, but I'm sure she's lots of places. They are absolutely beautiful. They have some sway to them, because that's like the one thing I was super picky about is like the Leku have to look right or it's gonna ruin it. Right. Like for me personally, I was like, I have to have good Leku. Like they have to sit right, they have to be a little flexible. Unfortunately it's not quite possible to get as flexible as they are in the cartoon while also maintaining the look. That's just the reality of of life versus a cartoon, unfortunately.
Right.
But hers are very close. They have some sway to them, a little bouncy. They're beautiful. I'm very excited. We did a test fit of them. A little trimming will be needed, which is kind of scary because you buy these like very expensive, very nice thing. You glue it to your face, and it's like, oh, we need to trim this, and it's like, with scissors, like you gotta like actually like modify it unfixably. That's scary, but I'm very excited.
What material is it? Is it like a silicone or is it fabric?
I believe they're silicone. I can like look on her Instagram real quick and double check because I know there's some that are latex, some that are fabric. I've seen fabric ones that I like, but I just really wanted a silicone for the durability, and I think it looks better closer up. So yes, they're silicone and latex free. And they have like a stuffed animal stuffing in them to help hold the shape. Yeah, so it's like a silicone, the whole thing. And there's like a hard, I don't know what the material is. It's probably like a plastic or like a resin. Probably not resin, but like a plastic like piece to hold the shape in the top. So you get those points. And then the rest is stuffed with a stuffed animal or like a pillow stuffing, like a cotton stuffing, to help hold their shape. And it's very nice because she gives you a ton extra, so you can like play around with what looks best with how it fits to your head and what doesn't weigh too much. Very lovely. They're very cool. I'm very excited to wear them, and they're not too heavy. That was another thing I was worried about. It looks very heavy, but it doesn't feel heavy on my head, which is good because that's your neck. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, plus, all of that weight's gonna go down into your shoulders, which that's the one thing they never tell you before you start costuming is you carry all of that weight just right on the tops of your shoulders.
Yes, shoulders, and it depends on the costume obviously, but I notice my belts in Sabine put a lot of weight on my hips. Because after a troop, I'm like, oh man, walking hurts. And it's partially because they're slightly tight, because to get the right, or I tighten them to get the right fit. I don't have to, but I want to because I think it looks better. So I'm left with like marks on my hips, and then it's like compressed. It's like, oh god, I like crack my back real good.
Yeah, yeah. Kylo is awful to wear for like more than like 3 or 4 hours because like again, if I wish I would have known, but like first, so you have the undercoat, which is basically the way I think of it is The Last Jedi, how he's got that tunic almost, and then it's connected to the sleeves, and then a mid coat, which is technically optional, but I think it gives a better look. And then the overcoat is so heavy because it's like a really thick, like quilt-like material. So like I had a troop on Thursday. We had a Columbus Blue Jackets game, and so plus that hood is the same material, so it's all just sitting here, and I'm just waiting for those knots in my shoulders to go out. But yeah, costuming, there are some sacrifices. So if you're okay with being uncomfortable for a couple days,
you always grow up. Oh, my lamp just turned out. You always grow up, or at least I always, you grow up hearing from media and things like beauty is pain. Cosplay is also pain. You have to sacrifice for the right look.
Yeah, I think it was first. I think I first realized it when we did the first shoot for the Han Solo Chronicles back in November of 21. And I wore the TK for the first time, and I was like, oh my god, this is all up top, all upper body, huh? So, yeah. Speaking of which, do you think you're going to be able to join us for the shoot next month?
Right now, it seems likely. Working out like jobs and things, but at the moment I'm hoping for definitely yes.
Yeah, well, I definitely hope to see you there. So, because I think we've only we've only met in person once, and that was at the armor party last year.
Yes.
And that was kind of in passing because you guys were doing your own
There was,
thing.
yeah, and I was like, I had so many people there. Yeah, this whole thing.
Right. But now, obviously, your sister does 000. Are we ever going to see you in a protocol droid?
You know, my dad was like, oh, I want to make a 3PO. And I was like, oh my gosh, I want to be 3PO. Like, that would be so cool. Like, Safi's 000 and I'm 3PO. But no, Safi has claimed 3PO because she gets all the good ones. Like, what do I get? The white one and an Empire?
You could do TC-14.
I do want to. Yeah, that's the silver one in Menace, isn't it?
Yep.
Because that was the other one I was about to say. Like, I would want to do that one. Like, it's 3PO. No one beats 3PO. Yeah, no, if there's... Obviously, my dad is always making so many things. We're working on Ahsoka right now. If there's a 3PO that gets done, Safi's claimed it, I wouldn't mind sneaking in. But honestly, the protocol droid I would like to do, and might be slightly physically impossible without modifications, because again, cartoons, I really like AP5 from Rebels. I just think he's very funny. I think his design's pretty cool. I like his big bug head. I think the arms would have to be thicker to fit a human being in them. But I think he's great. I would want to have a little something I can do. I can't really press a button, I guess, like I did as a Jawa, but something I can do so I can play that song he sings.
Mm-hmm.
I like him. Plus, then if there's a chopper, then you guys are best buds.
Right. Well,
Rebels has my heart, so.
Which honestly that surprises me, because I just got into this argument the other day with a coworker, that everyone obviously rants and raves about the Clone Wars, but Rebels gets such a bad rep anymore, because it's definitely more targeted for kids than the Clone Wars was overall. But I made the argument of objectively I think Clone Wars is a better series, but I would take the entirety of Rebels over the entirety of the Clone Wars.
Interesting. So. I think there's stuff I really like about both. I think I really like Rebels as a character-driven. So I like to say Rebels is about the rebels. It picks this group of rebels, and that's who we follow. You do not have an episode of the Clone Wars or of Rebels without at least one of the rebels. Everything is either it's maybe you don't have all of them. Maybe it's a Zeb episode or a Chopper episode or a Sabine episode. It's about the rebels. Where Clone Wars I really appreciate as a slightly more anthology episode or series. Obviously you have your kind of main cast and Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, Anakin, Rex. A few others fluctuate. I think Padme fluctuates sometimes in there. But there's there's plenty of episodes without any of those characters, and they're really fun. So I think to me that differentiates them enough. Where Rebels is it's more singular narrative of we're going to follow these characters, and obviously there's broader rebellion stuff in there, but it's mostly about these 6 characters. Where Clone Wars is you're oh yeah, we're having Anakin and Obi-Wan and Ahsoka go through this growth, but also here's an episode of R2 and 3PO just going on a little adventure for going my favorite one is the episode, my favorite example of this I should say, is there's an episode where they go shopping basically. And R2 goes to a little spa, and they're trying to get fruit for a cake, and it's just such a silly little premise, but Clone Wars gives us that.
Right.
I don't know. I personally don't work as I know a lot of people like to have their rankings. My brain just doesn't work that way. I like this about this series and this about this one, and my brain doesn't work as ranking. I think there's such things to appreciate. About different ones, so
no, I totally get that, because I'm kind of the same way. Really, it's Revenge of the Sith and then everything else for me, which the one thing that people like to poke fun at me for is that I have 114 copies of Revenge of the Sith on DVD now. So, that
That's quite a lot.
look, it was.
I don't know if I have 114 copies of anything.
Look, for a little backstory, and I'm sure I've told this story before, but it was there was a TikToker back in 2020 that he was buying every copy of The Cat in the Hat that he saw. And I was like, I should do that for Revenge of the Sith. And a friend of mine who isn't really a Star Wars fan, and he was like, you'd never do it. And then I went, I think I did like 2 weeks of I went to every single exchange within, which the exchange, it's like a movie, video game, music, same premise as GameStop. Trade in things, sell pre-owned stuff. So for like 2 weeks, for like 25-mile radius, I would go to every store and buy every single copy of Revenge of the Sith they had. It got so bad that within those 2 weeks, their pricing scale boosted incredibly on Revenge of the Sith. Because if you just looked at the sheer numbers, you would think like, oh my god, this is, this movie is gaining popularity. It's selling out every copy at every store. But in reality, I was just inflating the market because when I first started, they were $2 and $3 a copy, and then when I stopped, like going every single day, they were like $10, $12 a copy. So I boosted the market that much. But anyway, so back to what I was saying. I always say that all Star Wars is good Star Wars. I don't care really what it is. There's a 99.99% chance that I'm going to enjoy it. And if I don't enjoy it, then I'm just not going to watch it.
Mm-hmm.
But the only reason I say that I would take Rebels in its entirety over the Clone Wars is because you do have those characters. It is definitely a more character-driven show, and it's easier for me to connect when, when you've got these, such a tight knit of characters that you're actively growing and actively like progressing in arc. Whereas the Clone Wars, I love the anthology stuff, but there are certain episodes where I'm like, okay, I don't really know who these characters are. It's hard for me to get invested when, in 2 weeks we're going to be on a completely different story with completely different characters.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I see that. I'm huge fan of anthologies. Like, I like Twilight Zone. I recently started Black Mirror. I can only watch a little bit of Black Mirror at a time though, because that show is like crazy. But like, I love Visions. I really love so many of the Star Wars books that are like a collection of short stories. I really like the idea of, in any media, like just taking a little peek into a story and like opening a window and looking in and then closing and going to something else. I just think that's really cool and a really great way to tell stories. So like for me, that's something I really like about Clone Wars, but I also really, like you said, like the character-driven narrative where you get this character and you grow with them and you watch them and you really connect with them. I also connect with characters like very easily. Like I'll like watch like an Overwatch animated short that's like 10 minutes and just start crying. Like the first time I ever watched it. It's just who I am. I very easily connect with characters very instantly. But yeah, I think, it's like something that also like I think a lot of people forget when they talk about, you have like some people like, oh, Clone Wars is like the best thing. Like they should just like make everything Clone Wars. Cause I rewatched a couple years ago. I rewatched Clone Wars for the first time in a while, and I like was watching it, and I was like the first 2 seasons, I was like, Ahsoka's hardly even here. Like, there's like a lot of episodes without her.
Yep.
Obviously she does get her time to shine in those seasons, but I was like, there's a lot where like they don't even mention her. Like, and I kind of forgot that, and I think a lot of people forget that too. They just, obviously the more memorable arcs are the ones like the Umbara arc or like Mortis, like those that focus on these characters. Like people forget, like, we got a lot of Jar Jar, man.
Yep.
There was a lot of Jar Jar. Like R2 and 3PO got like Gilligan's Island, or yeah, I think that's what reference. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff in there, man. Like, especially when they use it to like crap on, like you said, like when they crap on Rebels. It's like, dude, you really can't. It's like, oh well, there's a whole episode of Rebels where they just like try and get fruit, and it's like, yeah, man, but
Yeah, I
You're
think a
really
lot of
gonna
people.
like.
I think a lot of people forget that those first two seasons where they really hadn't found their groove and their niche yet. I mean, they're hard to get through
I
sometimes.
will say I really love those first two seasons, kind of for that reason. Partially, it's definitely a little partially nostalgia. Like the Blue Shadow virus arc is for me one of my strongest, like some of my strongest like early Star Wars memories are watching like the Blue Shadow virus arc, Malevolence, the Ryloth. What was the other one I was about to think of? And I can't remember it. But like, there's a lot of great gems in those first two seasons. I really love them. I think they can be fun to watch when you're like, I'm not quite feeling Mortis right now, but I'm kind of feeling Jar Jar shenanigans. Like
Right.
it's a nice like, I think there's stuff to appreciate there, for sure. Even I know a lot of people don't think they're harder to get through, like you said. I really enjoy them. Whenever I do a Clone Wars rewatch, I look forward to them very much. I think they're very fun. It's a little
Yeah.
camp, you know. Star Wars is a little camp.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the reason that I have I have a difficulty getting through those first two seasons is because I didn't have that nostalgia.
Mhm.
Because I remember I watched the first season of the Clone Wars like when it came out, and then I think I don't know if it was an age thing or just like a lack of consistency thing, but I fell out of the Clone Wars after the first season, so I didn't rewatch it until it was on Netflix in like what 2014, 15, somewhere in
Yeah.
there when Netflix
It was on
got
Netflix
the
for
rights.
for for quite a while. Um, yeah,
Yeah,
sounds right.
yeah, so I hadn't watched it, up until I was older, because I would have been 15, 16 when I think I finally sat down and watched it in its entirety up to I think season 6 was the last season that Netflix did. So I don't
Mhm.
have that nostalgia for those first two seasons like I know a lot of people do. So,
I just think
but
they're fun, and I'm someone like I really love like Resistance. Like I know for some people, like if it's little kitty, it's not for them. That's fine. I like it. I like that kind of having fun with my inner child um and just and part of it's nostalgia. Also like the I my sister and I played the Lego Clone Wars game a
mm,
lot. That
mhm.
game is really fun. That also is part of like the Blue Shadow virus is like a mission you can play in that game. And honestly, that game deserves more credit for like innovating Lego games. That Lego Clone Wars was the first Lego game to have split screen when your
Mhm.
characters went in two different directions. And it
Yep.
had, I don't know if they've included it in other Lego games since, but they had this really fun like strategy game mode where you had a battlefield and there was like different
Oh
pods
yeah.
and you
Mhm.
would like go to a pod and you could like make like a unit of troopers or like a cannon or like build a tank thing like and it was like a whole like strategy battle mode. I always thought that was really fun and you got to like run around as your character in your little strategy game.
Mhm.
I don't know if they've done it in other game modes since or in other games since, but I always really enjoyed that one.
Yeah, I don't think they've done that. I see I after God, I remember what the last. So I religiously played every Lego game. I think up until Indiana Jones 2 came out, and then I cut it back to just the Star Wars ones. So
I played obviously complete saga, obviously.
100%, of course.
I think my sister and I almost 100%ed that game, and then we got an Xbox One, and the progress didn't save.
Oh,
Uh, it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't want to do it all. Like, the game's fun, but like, I don't want to do it all again now that I lost my progress. Like, it's just a little demoralizing.
right.
But we would play, I think we played a lot of Lego Batman 1 and 2,
Mm-hmm.
I think. And Lego Indiana Jones, which I always really like because I like Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Um,
Lego games are so underrated, I feel.
yeah, I haven't played as much of the Skywalker saga as I wanted to. I definitely want to play it more. Because I know it's really fun. I need to get the. I know they like just released like a new version that like has all the DLC with it.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna get that one.
Yeah, definitely. When you get settled down, I highly recommend it. I think I'm at 70%. I think I just have the planets left to do.
I played a little bit. My dad and I played a little bit of A New Hope. It was really fun. It was kind of crazy because I was like kind of picturing like complete saga, and then I was like, oh, there's like this like has like completely different mechanics. Like, what do you mean I can like dodge and zoom in and duck behind cover? Like, this is a Lego game. This is too much. But very like in a very good way. Very fun. It did take me a minute to get over the fact that they can talk.
Mm-hmm.
I was still used to the and I was like, this is weird.
Yeah.
But I definitely prefer it now. Not I wouldn't say prefer it, but I like it in this new game. Now that I played it a little bit, but at first it was definitely like I don't know how I feel about this.
Thankfully, I had Lego Force Awakens to kind of prep me for all of that. So
I played a little bit of the Force Awakens one too. It was just one of those things where I was like, the time it came out, I was just like busy with like life, like high school stuff,
right.
And then like after a while, I just like there were other games, and I just kind of skipped it by accident.
Yeah, I never finished it, because I will say, I mean, it definitely felt like okay, the new Star Wars movie, got to get a Lego game out for it. These are our most popular IP. So it felt kind of rushed, but it's still worth the go around. But I do real quick, since the Mandalorian at the time of this recording, the Mandalorian starts on Wednesday. So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about that, because obviously you've got a deep connection to Mandalorians. Is there anything that you are really, really excited for this season coming up that you just can't wait for?
Well, I'm hoping, it's not confirmed, but I'm hoping to see Sabine. We know we're getting live action Sabine in Ahsoka, obviously. But, there was some fireworks in that one trailer. Like, she puts fireworks in her explosives. That's like her thing. We could maybe just, a little setup, like they did with they had like a little setup for Book of Boba Fett in season 2. Maybe like a little thing for Ahsoka. Maybe not. I'm really excited to see like this whole arc about like the identity of Mandalore and Mandalorians, like what it means, all these different factions, and like really exploring that. Like, something I always loved about Clone Wars and Rebels was that they really explored that. So getting to see that is going to be very cool. I'm very excited. I love Bo-Katan. I'm really excited to see what she gets up to. I think she's such an interesting character because she's like, she like spent some time as an antagonist and then as a protagonist, and now she's like, we're not really sure. I think it's super exciting. More Darksaber action. Absolutely. And I have no doubt they've got a storage of surprises, cameos, all sorts of things ready to bring for us.
No, for sure.
Like they did last season. Yeah, and obviously can't wait to watch them fly around in that N1. And I'm really excited to see. I'm really hoping. Obviously, everything we've been presented with has been very Mandalorian focused. Obviously, it's the Mandalorian, but like Mandalorian culture and stuff. And we kind of resolved a lot of the more like Jedi parts in season 2 and in the Book of Boba Fett. But I'm really looking forward to Grogu's arc. We did see probably flashbacks in the trailers, and I'm excited to see, hopefully Grogu getting a story arc, because now he left. He doesn't want to be a Jedi. Like, he left behind Luke's temple. So like how he fits, and this ties into Mandalorian identity, how he's gonna fit in to this Mandalorian story arc and what it's gonna mean for him. Is something I'm curious, because obviously when we talk about Grogu, we're like, oh, like little baby Yoda, he's so cute. But I think as a character, he has a lot of potential to be really interesting, even as a baby. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they end up doing between Bo-Katan and Din Djarin, to see what they do with that, their little conflict there between with the Darksaber. So, which granted, I don't think they're going to kill off Din Djarin, but I seriously think that Bo-Katan's going to, she's going to challenge him, and
Yes.
I don't I just so the a little backstory. The way you are with Sabine is kind of how I am with Din, because that was the first real costume I did. Like I've done like closet cosplays here and there, but I unfortunately I didn't have the wonderful support system that you do with your dad. That he loves building costumes. I just kind of had to learn it on my own. So when I got my 3D printer, the Mandalorian was just fresh on season 2. So I'm like, all right, I got to do Mandalorian. I got to do Din Djarin's armor, the Beskar armor. So I do have a deep connection with that character. So I'm very excited to see what they do with him in, like you said, in the way of identity, because part of me wants him to go with Bo-Katan in that sect of Mandalorians, but at the same time it's like, ooh, I still like the mystery of the Children of the Watch, and the not removing your helmet and all that jazz. So
Yes.
I'm excited to see what they do with that, and obviously, like you said, with little Grogu, see if, because I seriously think that he's going to be the link from original trilogy to sequel trilogy. I feel like that's gonna be our connective tissue there.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe we'll see older Grogu someday. And yeah, I think something else I'm looking forward to is, Mandalorian season 2 kind of leaves us off with, Din gets the Darksaber from Gideon, and Bo-Katan is like, oh my god, you won the Darksaber in combat. Like, I was like, this is supposed to be mine. And Din's like, oh, like, I don't want it. Like, go ahead. Like, So the season 2 kind of leaves us off with the, like, Din does not want this. This object, this responsibility, and Bo does. And then we get into Book of Boba Fett, and we're still on a cliffhanger. Obviously, that Book of Boba Fett resolved leaving Grogu, but didn't really resolve much about the whole Darksaber, except that he still has it. So it's, what does this mean to Din at this point? We know there's a lot of other Mandalorians in the trailer. Like, is he going to decide to become a unifier for Mandalorians? Like, what is he, where is this going? I'm very excited to see that play out. I'm that weirdo who loves, like, in Phantom Menace when they're talking about, like, trade routes and stuff. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I love that stuff. Like, in Clone Wars, people are like, ugh, the Bank and Clan episode. And I'm like, tell me more about the economy of Star Wars. So I'm excited to see, like, if they go, like, at least a little bit of a, like, political route with it, and, like forging alliances and, like, stuff like that. I'm very excited. I think this season's going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to it. And also, we have more Bad Batch, and I think airing Bad Batch and The Mandalorian together is a very interesting choice, and I can't help but wonder if it's for a reason, and if we'll see any connections start to form, even loose ones.
Right. Yeah, I see. With what you said about the Book of Boba Fett, I do have to disagree with you. I think that they have started to not completely, but they've started to resolve that. Din doesn't want the Darksaber. He just wants to be, the Mandalorian. Because if he truly didn't want it, I feel like, he definitely could have thrown that fight with Paz Vizsla. And he was actively training with the armorer to try and get better with it. So with what we've seen so far from season 3, is I feel like he's definitely trying to live up to the responsibility that he's been given with the Darksaber.
Right. I honestly kind of forgot about that. I was mostly about Grogu right there. You're totally right. Yeah, I guess what's mostly curious to me is how he is. I wonder if we'll at least a little bit look at like how he gets there, because season 2 finale, Bo is like, "Oh my God, you have the dark saber." He's like, "Oh, here you go, like, take
Right.
it." And then we jumped in, like you said, training with it. So I wonder if we'll see that explored at all. I know they probably won't, but I hope a little bit for like a little flashback of like what happens immediately after Luke walks out of that room. Like
Hmm.
that's got to be awkward. Like what
Right.
even happened in that room? I know they probably won't, but I hope they'll at least like mention it or refer to something, because I'm like, man, like that's crazy. Like that immediate reaction after, like, yeah.
Well, and from that first trailer, I mean, obviously she still holds a grudge. She was not
she
really
she
warm
can
with
hold a
him.
grudge. Yeah, and and I wonder, because obviously what we know now, and I assume we'll explain this more this season, we know that Sabine relinquishes the Darksaber to Bo, not in combat, gives it to her. Then this this Night of a Thousand Tears, this terrible event against Mandalore happens after Rebels. Um, Bo lost the Darksaber to Gideon, and now she's here. So I'm looking at like Bo's, like, does she feel like responsible? Is part of the reason she's like so hell bent on winning it in combat from Din or whoever, is because maybe she's like almost like a superstitious, like, this is because I didn't take it in combat, like this is my failure. I'm really excited. I'm hoping they like reference that, and like I'm really excited to see how. And this again where I'm like, maybe Sabine could show up, like, Darksaber stuff.
Right. Which, I
Uh,
mean, if you look at Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau's track record, I mean, they are notorious for always making sure you're setting up the next thing. Because I
mm-hmm.
mean, if even if you just go back to season 1, Boba Fett was technically in season 1 at the
Boba
end of
Fett was
episode
there.
5. And then, you have Moff Gideon at the end where flashes the Darksaber real quick. And then season 2 was just setting up everything else that they wanted to do between, Ahsoka, season 3, the Book of Boba Fett. I would be shocked if we don't see Ahsoka. It's either going to be Ahsoka, Sabine, or anyone from the Ghost crew. I would be shocked because they always
Mm-hmm.
do it. They always set up the next show.
Yeah. And that's, I think Sabine is the most likely candidate, because like her ties to this Darksaber and Mandalorian identity,
Mm-hmm.
um, a theme and arc that they're setting up at least. I also think maybe we don't see Sabine directly, but we see like her mom or her brother, because
Right.
hopefully they survived. I really like Ursa Wren. I hope she's okay. Um, and maybe we'll see Sabine, in a little like hologram thing. She's like, "Hey kid, what's up?" Um, I think there's so much potential. I'm very excited. I know a lot of people have been pointing out, like, season 1, the first episode ends with the reveal of Grogu. Season 2, first episode ends with the reveal of Boba Fett. What's it gonna be this time in the premiere?
Right. Yeah. I have the utmost faith in Jon Favreau because he hasn't there's not been a single episode that I've been like, that was awful. I can't. I don't even want to see what happens next week. So the Mandalorian has, and I always say it. The Mandalorian. Obviously, I've always been a Star Wars fan. I have it tattooed all over my body. It's been my sole personality trait since I was 4 years old. But I had kind of fallen out of Star Wars, being such a big part of my life until The Mandalorian came out. So that's what really sparked me to get back into costuming, go headfirst into everything that is Star Wars. So I am extremely excited for this season, especially because I seriously think that we're going to get a second Mandalorian Civil War. But that's my tinfoil hat from over analyzing some of these trailers.
Hey, I mean, I don't even think that's a tinfoil hat. I think that's, you know, at least how they're kind of, it looks like they're positioning Bo to be an antagonist or a pseudo antagonist. And we see Din gathering up a bunch of Mandalorians, so
Right. And
very well could go that direction.
the big thing that tips me off is in the first trailer you see the Death Watch Mandalorians coming out of a dropship, but you don't see where until I believe it was either the second trailer or a TV spot, and then you see it's Navarro, obviously where Grief Karga is, where Din is at least part of the time, and then you see like Paz Vizsla, with his heavy repeating blaster, and so that's what leads me to believe like, oh, who's on whose side here? Is the armor fighting Din for being an apostate, or are they reuniting? Is Bo-Katan leading this? So, it's like the Charlie Day meme where he's got all of the yarn on the wall. Where I'm like, okay, this is here, that's there. Hear me out. Cigarette sticking out of my mouth. But yeah, I'm so excited because the other thing is they've always knocked the action out of the park, and as much as I love the deeper character stuff, I like turning my brain off. I like just watching things blow up a lot. So I think this season is going to be the best of both worlds for that for me. So
yeah, yeah, I think Star Wars almost always excels at the balance of blow stuff up and character stuff. Definitely leans one way or the other a bit more sometimes, but I think there's a usually good balance. Yeah, I think we're in for a good ride this season, and I am also very excited for the second half of the Bad Batch. More clone stuff, a bit more Crosshair soon, hopefully.
Yeah, I hope so. Because we've got what, 10 episodes so far, I think it is.
Yes, so we have only like 4 left, I think.
Yeah, there's not a whole lot, but I'm surprised that we've only seen Crosshair once.
I think, at least in my opinion, I think he's going to shine more in these last few episodes. I think that's where we're headed, maybe. Hopefully.
I certainly hope so, because in season 7 of the Clone Wars, when they first introduced them, Crosshair was my favorite. I thought, kind of off topic, but like in first-person shooters, I love playing the sniper. It goes back to my days in Team Fortress 2, if you even know what that is.
I played Team Fortress 2. That was my game before Overwatch.
I love TF2. But
I haven't played that game in a while. That is a fun game.
I know. I need to pick it back up. I've dumped so many hours into TF2. But anyway,
I was a spy myself.
Okay.
Sometimes I was a sniper or a scout, but mostly I was a spy.
See, I loved Spy, but I was never good enough to play Spy. But I will say this: one of my biggest achievements in high school is I got a butterfly knife, and I was able to do the behind the wrist opening trick. I love TF2, but that's the reason. Like, I loved Crosshair. I was very upset when they made him go with the Empire. Why couldn't it have been Echo? But so I'm super excited, and I seriously hope that we get more Crosshair and more Cody. They showed him a lot in the trailers.
I'm sure we're gonna get Cody. I'm sure we're gonna get more Cody. They wouldn't drop the Cody's gone without it leading somewhere, even if it's just in the finale. Yeah, I think I've said this on my podcast before. Cody is like, I wouldn't even say he's my favorite clone. I think that's Rex, but he's my clone. I would say that pretty much everyone who's a Clone Wars fan has their clone that's their special little guy. And for me, it's Cody. I think because when Safi and I would play action figures, she always wanted Rex because she liked blue. So I would get Cody. So I think that's my attachment, but it's extended into the actual content. So I just love Cody, and I can't wait to see maybe he reunites with Rex. I hope he gets this freaking chip out, because that's a little scary that he doesn't have it out, as we know right now.
Well,
Um,
well, I mean, if you
if
just look
Rex is
at,
if I assume Rex helped him get out because we know Rex was helping clones get out.
Mhm.
So I assume that's kind of the implication there. And so obviously Rex would be like, "Let's get your chip out, man." you know.
and
Ugh,
you know
seeing a Rex and Cody team up again, lose my mind.
the few non-Bad Batch episodes we've gotten leads me to believe like maybe the inhibitor chips, maybe we're thinking too much into it because Order 66 is, it's pretty much wrapped up. Like they got 90% of the Jedi, but it leads me to believe like maybe they're getting their free will back, maybe they're thinking on their own, and now they've had time to process like, oh, we did that. And these,
Right.
the people we've been following that aren't the Jedi for so long, maybe they're the problem. So it's like that Taylor Swift song, like, "Hey, I'm the problem, it's me." So
Yeah, I think, and that's something I hope as we get to explore more clones. I hope we get to see clones reckon with. Because obviously the main clones we've seen really talk about this have been Rex, who we know got his chip out before he hurt Ahsoka. And and now I'm hoping to see Cody, because as far as Cody knows, he killed Obi-Wan. Like, and they were friends. They worked together for years. And I hope we get to see Cody back and see even just like one conversation of him kind of reckoning with that. Because I think that's really interesting. The main reason I really want to make sure he has it out is because even though it's not like the mind, like the complete mind control thing, like I think some people assume, is it can still be activated. We
right.
know, and there's one of the Vader comics, they're able to use the chip to reactivate the clones and actually get them to attack Vader. Like, it can be used still, so I'm just like, just get it out, man. Just get it
Right.
out.
Which, I don't know if you've heard the leaked script or the leaked story for the Obi-Wan movie before we got the miniseries.
I have, and Cody was in it. Yes.
Right. Which, that kind of again, tinfoil hat. I overthink a lot of things. That's just kind of who I am. But that kind of leads me to think like, oh, there's a lot of talk about Kenobi season 2, and maybe they're gonna lean into that. Maybe the Bad Batch was just a way to set up, getting Cody to Obi-Wan to kind of, like you said, kind of reconcile with leading to believe that he killed Obi-Wan. So look, anything Tamora Morrison does, I'm all for it. I need more live action clones. That little taste that we got in Kenobi makes me want more.
Yeah, I think absolutely. Maybe we could see him in Ahsoka, a little Rexing it up there. Yeah, I think I have no doubt we'll see Cody again. I cannot imagine. I mean, maybe they did, but I would be shocked if they brought him back for that episode and mentioned him leaving mysteriously and then just dropped that.
Right. Which, after that episode aired, we talked about it on the Inflatable Falcon a little bit, where, I thought maybe, and again, once again, overthinking things, but, that kind of led me to think like, oh, what if Admiral Rampart did exactly what he did to, I forget his name, the clone from the first 2 episodes. Oh god, where's Ken when you need him? But maybe he took care of him, and Cody was killed off screen, which I don't think they would do. But it's never out of the realm of possibility. That would make me so sad.
It is possible. I just hope it's not. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very excited, and obviously, they kind of dropped that bomb a couple weeks ago, where the clones are now decommissioned, and the Bad Batch have been kind of run around doing other stuff since. But I definitely think we'll get Crosshair and hopefully the perspective of some other clones with him dealing with that and like what that's gonna mean for them. And obviously we know where some of them end up, like the clone in Kenobi, or then you have on the other side, Rex and Wolf and Gregor.
Right.
Uh,
Which we still haven't seen Wolf again. I mean, we saw Gregor
not.
last season in the Bad Batch, and obviously we've seen Rex, but, where's Wolf in all this?
Yes, and even though we've seen Gregor, we haven't really seen how he would meet up with Rex and how that they find each other, and maybe we won't see that, maybe, but yeah, I hope if not in the Bad Batch, in something else, we get a little bit of how exactly Rex and Wolf and Gregor ended up together on that fishing barge thing.
Yep.
Because it's just quite the combination of clones. And also, as we're watching the Bad Batch, we're seeing Rex is really an early revolutionary, specifically helping other clones. Like, Echo leaves the Bad Batch to go with Rex so they can fight for the betterment of the galaxy. So how does that Rex, what exactly leads him to choose to go into basically retirement with the other clones? That, of course, they then actually signed back up again with the rebellion, but what gets him to that little place in the first place,
Right, which, and this is something we'll probably never see, at least not anytime soon, but I really want to know how
we'll see everything eventually.
True. But I really want to know how Rex was able to do all this and still, like, keep up appearances with the Empire. Because as you see in Rebels, I mean, they're still in contact, like they know they exist, and they're still out there.
And see, what's interesting to me too is in the Clone Wars finale and in the Ahsoka book, they're like, Rex faked his death. Like, they kind of think he's dead, and then so I wonder if it's like a mix up in records. I'm very curious to see, you're right, like where exactly that where that comes from, where it's also, I think it's part, and this is something I think has been explored really well in Rebels and Andor, and I think Bad Batch has touched on it too, is where like the Empire is such a giant monster of an entity that it's just become too bloated to be effective. So like you have this, you have whatever Imperials are near those clones. They look up and they're like, oh, this guy, CT7567? Okay, yeah, he existed, and like not really seeing everything, because there's like all these records and stuff. Yeah. That's my guess, is just kind of a like Google, oh, he exists, okay, cool, this is like a clone guy, and like no one really cares enough to like take that extra step because there's so much other stuff to worry about.
Right, it's like, these guys are gonna die off soon. Just let them go live out their last 10 minutes on this.
Yeah, and it's like, oh, like a bunch of old soldiers on a repurposed little tank thing going fishing for giant like worms. Like, okay.
Right, it's like, what do we care? That their life expectancy is a quarter of ours, so just let them do their thing. Let's not bother them.
Right. It's like, we got like real rebels to worry about. Like, what do we care about these guys?
Right. And then ironically enough, they end up being they start the downfall of the Empire, essentially.
I mean, that's how it always goes. It's always the ones they overlook, You hear Cassian talks about in Andor, just like walking into Imperial facilities and picking up their stuff and selling it. Can you imagine, like, if one guy had caught him and locked him up?
Right.
Like, how different would things have gone?
You just gotta look like you belong. So, which, that's something we didn't even get a chance to talk about, is Andor was fantastic.
So good. It still blows me away a little bit, like how just phenomenal it was. I was already excited for it because I really love Rogue One, and I think Cassian's cool, so I was like, yay, more Rebel stuff. And I was just blown away by, like I said, like earlier, like I'm the person who loves the political stuff in the prequels, so when it's like Mon Mothma having little like covert political chats, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And when they're talking, and everyone else is like, I don't really get it. Like, what do they mean moving credits into bank accounts? And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so interesting. I love
It's
hearing about this stuff.
it's
It
money
fleshes out the
laundering, guys.
world. I know. Come on. Um,
Well, I think it was so good, and I think everyone loved it so much, is because it's so different than anything we've
mhm.
gotten in. I mean, I, God, I don't even know how long.
And ever, I don't. I think it's so different than any Star Wars we've ever had. Um, and that was part of the appeal. Although I think, to me, I think the takeaway of Andor, one of the many takeaways of Andor, is that we need more Star Wars that just tries different things. I think some people are like, oh, we just need every Star Wars to just be like Andor. I don't think that's it. I think Andor is so special because it's special. And I think, you know, just doing different things with Star Wars in the future is the way to go for me personally.
Well, I think Star Wars has always been at its best when you have so many different creators, and they have their individual tastes and their
Mm-hmm.
style. I mean, look no further than the original trilogy. I mean, you had George Lucas obviously directed the A New Hope, and then Irvin Kershner, and then Richard Marquand directed Return of the Jedi. You had three different directors with three very different styles, and I feel like that's when Star Wars is at its best, when you have different people putting a different spin. That's, I mean, it. Not to
I
get too
mean, The
controversial.
Mandalorian has different directors basically every episode, and that I
Exactly.
think is a big part of its success.
Yeah, and like I said, not to get too controversial, but that's half the reason I love The Last Jedi, is
Mm-hmm.
because it was so different than The Force Awakens, the prequels, the original trilogy, and it tried different things, and people weren't ready for that yet. I definitely feel like it was, not to say it was ahead of its time, because I feel like that's a bit too cliche, but I think that it we hadn't gotten the Mandalorian experience or the Andors, where it was, you had different hands in the same pot. So I feel like the
Mm-hmm.
dramatic shift in tone wasn't, people weren't braced for it yet.
Right.
You picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of the beauty of Star Wars is it can be so many things. And still, I don't think, for me personally, there hasn't been any Star Wars that's come out and it didn't still feel like Star Wars. Like, even when it's so different from everything else, like, The Last Jedi, like Andor, like any Visions. Like, you watch it and it's different, but it's still Star Wars. It still has that vibe, and I think that's, that Star Wars has such a broad potential that it can be anything. That's why, like, when we are talking about the Clone Wars earlier, I think that's something that the Clone Wars itself just shows off really well, because it shows how you can do anything with with Star Wars. You have R2 and 3PO going to get fruit for a cake and getting, like, kidnapped. You have the Umbara arc, which is like this, like, military, like, thing. I don't. That's a terrible description of it, but you know what I mean. Like the
Yeah.
Mortis arc with, like, the weird Force, like, spirit stuff. Then you have the Zilla Beast arc where it's literally Godzilla in Star Wars. Like, you have this stuff. You have espionage stuff. You have heavy battles. Like, there's you can do anything with Star Wars. Um, and I think that potential is something that I hope they continue to take advantage of. Like, I know we're getting Visions this May, Visions Volume
Oh,
2, and I'm so excited for that. I love Volume 1. Now we're getting Wallace and Gromit Star Wars, man. So hype.
wait. Back up. What?
The studio that did Wallace and Gromit, Aardman, I believe it is doing a short for Visions.
Oh, that's see. I'm look. I'm not a
Right?
big anime guy. Ironically enough, I have a My Hero tattoo, but that's about as far as my anime goes. Uh, Visions was phenomenal. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
the stories that were told and the visuals that were put on screen, fantastic. But you tell me there's claymation Wallace and Gromit Star Wars. I'm sold. That's all I needed.
It's coming. No, and obviously I'm also not super into anime. I've seen some, but I also adored the first season. I did 2 costumes from the first season of Visions, but this, they're branching out. So there's still, I think, a Japanese or studio or 2 involved in Vision season 2, but we're getting a Spanish studio. There's Aardman, which I think is British, like a whole bunch of different studios. We're getting one of the studios behind Legend of Korra, which is a series I really like. A lot of very different studios. So there's like claymation, some that do more 3D animation, many things. I'm super excited for Vision Volume 2.
I mean, we were talking about nostalgia earlier. Wallace and Gromit, that was a cornerstone of my childhood.
Safi and I watched some Wallace and Gromit, but we both adored Shaun the Sheep, the like little spin-off series. Yep. We would watch that religiously on Netflix. I think we had a Shaun the Sheep DS game that we would play. I'm very excited for Aardman Star Wars.
That's gonna be.
It's called "I Am Your Mother" is their short.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that we had this much information about Visions already.
No, if you go to StarWars.com, it comes out May 4th. Is the release date for Visions Volume 2.
Right.
If you go to StarWars.com, you scroll a little bit on the News and Blog tab. There's a little article about Visions. It lists every studio, director, and the name of their short.
All right. Well, I guess I guess I have some homework to do.
This is when we do podcasts about Star Wars news, when there's no episodes coming out. We talk about that stuff. Yeah, Visions Volume 2 is going to be really great. Yeah, after that came out, I was F from The Village Bride for Halloween, because it was a COVID-safe costume, because she has the face mask, which I did not make it like I literally made it out of like felt and a black cloth mask that I had. And I think the whole costume was like felt and like pieces of stuff. And then to Celebration Anaheim, I wore Cara from The Ninth Jedi.
Oh, okay.
Which was very fun, but she has that like crazy side ponytail, so the wig kept like drifting down. I had to like adjust it. Yeah. But I was so excited I saw another Cara when I was at Celebration. I was like, oh my gosh, double Cara. It's very cool.
Yeah, see, I want to do Ronin so bad, but I have so many other costumes that I'm like, okay, I need to finish this, I need to start this, I need to tweak this. So that's Ronin is unfortunately on the back burner, because at least I can get that ponytail just right. My hair is just long enough where I can get it to where it's not too long and not too short.
Yeah, that's a very good book too. Speaking of Star Wars doing completely new things,
you're barking up the wrong tree.
No, you don't read.
I cannot read to save my life.
Well, if you can listen to an audiobook, the Ronin novel is very good. It kind of it takes you through before, during, and after that short. It really explores all of the characters and makes them very interesting and cool. And it's like a complete, like it's not a canon book, but it's like a complete reimagining of Star Wars through the lens of like Japanese mythos. Obviously Star Wars already has Japanese influences, but like a complete reimagining through almost solely Japanese influence. It's very cool. It's like more of like the Empire is basically like the feudal lords, and the Jedi were like the samurai, but they served the feudal lords and ended up kind of becoming corrupted by those lords, and so it's basically the Jedi are serving the Empire. And the Sith are the rebels against the Jedi, who are kind of fighting back. It's super interesting. Very, very cool story. If you can listen to or read it, I recommend.
I've got problems with podcasts that my attention span is so short.
Totally fair.
There are certain audiobooks where if you hook me quick enough, I will want to finish it. Like the Dr. Aphra.
The Dr. Aphra one's so good. Yeah. I re-listened to that recently.
I actually read the book before I listened to it. Because again, just to circle back here, your dad hounded me to listen to it. Look, it's what he's best at. It's not a
No,
knock at him. He's really
very good at it. It works. It works. You know, you can't knock it because it works.
It does. You know, hey, I mean, he got me into the 501st after enough hounding, so I can't be too mad.
He's always right in the end. That's the real, at least as his kid, that's the real annoying part. It's like, Dad, I don't wanna, and then I do it. I'm like, oh, that was the right thing to do.
Yep.
Darn it.
Yeah, but you know that was one where I was like, okay, I'll listen to it, and then the other one he told me about was the IMC3PO. See, I'm like, if I'm going for books, I'm better with nonfiction than I am with fiction.
Okay.
But I'll have to check out the Ronin one because that one does sound interesting. Plus, I love the character to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, I think most like audiobook listening things, if it will let you like listen to the first like chapter, the first half of the chapter, so you can listen to it, see if it hooks you, and then shell out your coin.
See, I pay for Audible for some reason.
Oh, well, so, there you go.
Yeah, I think I've got like 20 credits built up because I haven't gotten a new book in 20 months.
Well, there you go. Give Ronin a try.
Yeah, well, I'll definitely have to check that one out. But I feel like this is a good place to end. Better place than ever. So, any closing thoughts that you might have?
I mean, you know, we're 2 days out, almost just 1 day out from the Mandalorian season 3 at this point. So I'm super hyped, hoping to see some cool stuff this season. I'm sure we will. Yeah, you can find Star Wars Geek Girl. StarWarsGeekGirl.com is the website. Twitter and Instagram are at SW Geek Girl, and Facebook to Star Wars Geek Girl. You can listen to the podcast, I'm sure, on whatever service you're listening to, the Beskar Bucket.
Yeah. And as always, you can find me here on the Beskar Bucket. The Instagram is at the Beskar Bucket Podcast. And then, of course, every Wednesday is the Inflatable Falcon with myself, Mike, Zoe's dad, and Ken Bishop, my 2 favorite hosts that I have. I love doing that every week with them. And then, of course, I have to plug everyone else's show. So you got the Rambling Star Wars Fan, which is Ken's solo show. And the Forces Behind Star Wars that Ken is also a co-host on. So that is all under the Unifying Fandom Network branch. So, Zoe, thank you so much for coming on. You have an open invitation anytime you're bored and you want to hop on. I am always down.
Absolutely. So. Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun. Yeah. Always good to talk Star Wars.
Oh, of course. But thank you guys so much for listening to another episode of the Beskar Bucket. May the Force be with you.